request you to please come up to the stage and request someone from IL&FS to Dr. Hema Raghavan, former Dean, Students Welfare, University of Delhi. Mr. Subir Shukla, Principal Coordinator, Ignis ERG. Mrs. Sudha Rajamohan, Principal, GEMS International School. And Dr. Chandrasekhar, Vice President, IL&FS Education. Thank you, sir. Just a little bit on the format of today's presentation and discussion, how we're going to take it forward. We will have each of the eminent panelists speak on their topic. I will introduce them and also mention the topic. You're welcome to take questions while the topic is being discussed and ask. We can take in a couple of questions after the presentation is over. So after the first presentation, we'll take a couple of questions. If there are more questions and we find a lot of interaction, we can probably have that at the lunchtime. You can meet all of them at lunchtime and they would be glad to answer all your queries. So we will proceed in that manner. Recipient of the British Council Scholarship Award, the British Council Visitorship Award, and the Ministry of Education Fellowship for Postdoctoral Study in UK. She has received the Carnegie Mellon Award for Leadership in addition to the Indira Priyadarshini Award in 2001. Dr. Raghavan will enlighten us on the key issues in education. Dr. Raghavan.
Thank you for inviting me. Let me just to say why I requested the organizers to give me the first speaker's position. It is simply this. Probably I feel that I am a misfit here because I have not actually taught in a school. I have taught many children at home, but I have not taught in a school. All my experience, more than 45 years, has been at the university level. But at the same time, I am associated with a couple of schools, and I have seen that we have to do something right at this time. I was just talking to one of my co-panelists that I have great regard and reverence for Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who started the modern temples, IITs and IIMs. Yes, he was always looking at the sky. What about the roots? And where we missed out was we were not giving sufficient attention to school education. And only a small number could go into the IITs, could go for higher studies, and a large number of young people were left illiterate. Today, if you are governed by a whole lot of people who are semi-educated, partly educated, or who do not have too much of a knowledge about what education is, then what happens is that we are in the kind of a mess that we are today. So today, what I am going to do is, of course, I did prepare a paper whenever I am asked to do some such thing, but my topic will be key issues in education. But before I come to that, this is something that all of you must have read in the papers in the last few weeks, rather I would say in the last 2 weeks. Can it be reversed? For me, I think there are two fundamental things. If you look at it, the First one is the huge population and the huge number of children whom, even though they have the RTE, the right to education, do not find enough places where they can get educated. The lack of basic education is the second one, which contributes to the higher population also. I have to give you some statistics, hopefully not boring you. 67% of our population lives in rural India. And the rural India just contributes a tiny 17% to our GDP. And this 67% is insufficiently educated to read even instructions given in fertilizer and pesticide leaflets. They don't know how to read and how to make use of them, let alone comprehend rural development technologies to boost up agricultural productivity. Today, rural Punjab, which boasts the highest agricultural productivity in India, is only half the average yield in China and 25% yield of US farmers. So, the basic thing is any transition to a welfare state is possible if people are educated to receive and value the benefits proffered by the state. India is currently the largest illiterate population, has got the largest illiterate population in the world. And you all know that as far as literacy rates are concerned, I find a lot of women here. The gender difference is there, 82.14% for men, 65% for women. And you all know also one of the major drawbacks of our school education, especially in rural schools, in government schools, is that there is no proper sanitation and proper toilets for most of the girls. And women's literacy not only affects family planning, but it also affects the physical growth and mental development of the children, because they cannot really teach their children as well as their own. And I come to this point, there is a shortage of 6 lakh classrooms. The point is that what we have to say is that training of teachers which IL&FS has taken is absolutely good. It cannot be underestimated, nor can it be overestimated. Is infrastructure, leasing and finance corporation. And moving into the education is one of the good things they have done, because I am going to say that we do not have the infrastructure for education in most of the rural schools. As far as the leasing is concerned, despite coming from Central University like Delhi, despite being from the government service, I feel that it is high time education is leased out to private people. The private-public partnership is never more important than in the field of education. Finance, the money that is given is not enough, and what we need is more and more of finance, and then this finance has to be monitored. So even when you say that we are going to lease to the private partnership, I was again talking to my co-panelist, and I feel very, very strongly about it, that in many schools, in many good schools, we do a lot of training of the teachers, and the teachers are really brought up. The in-service training is there, and every term we do the training. But at the end of it, a new school is set up somewhere in Noida or Gurgaon, pay a huge salary that an MNC executive can get, and off they go. So we never have enough good teachers to teach in our schools. So there has to be some kind of a uniform policy, a uniform rationality. I am making this plea. I do not know whether you will be reaching the Ministry of HRD. The government has to see to it that you pay attractive salary, but make that salary to teachers uniform. No school can say that I can get more money from my students and I can pay my teachers much more. It has to be a uniform pay scale, and that is important. Then we come to, the teaching methodology. Most of you are teachers. I am not, as I said, that I do not belong to, this kind of training. But I could say, I could only share with you some of my thoughts. We are ensconced in the digital age. And you have plenty, every time I open up a magazine, Education World or something like that, the advertisements that I see, right from music to physical training to mathematics to science and biology, is a plethora of software available for the students for self-study, almost making teachers' assistants redundant. And what I want to say is that this kind of a digital education, because all of you are from school and you know about school teaching, nowhere is teacher more important than now today. We cannot just simply say that we have the digital software and that's a fashionable substitute for distance learning. But more important work has to be done first at the teaching level, first at the school level, and then they can take up anything that they want. I find that one of the reasons why, apart from anything else, yeah, I'm sorry, I have to just backtrack on that. Probably I'm a maverick, so please bear with me if I make some kind of a caustic comments. But what I find is that suddenly out of the blue, as soon as Kapil Sibal became the Minister of HRD, even if he's going to ban me from speaking anywhere, I have to say that he brought out a wonderful kind of a thing for all parents and teachers to rejoice. No examination even in the 10th class. Once you do that, 15 plus, what kind of attention span you can have from the children? And many teachers from the government schools whom I have met said, ma'am, it is difficult to manage the class because they know that they will pass till the 10th. And therefore, what main challenges that I have is, let me list out the 4 key issues because I will be running short of time. The first one, this was stated as early as the 16th century, nearly 500 years back, by the great essayist called Montaigne. And he made a very brilliant observation: a brain well formed rather than a brain well filled. Instead of cluttering the brain with a great deal of knowledge, the effort by the teacher should be to organize it on strategic lines to improve cognitive thinking. As teachers, and I have been also a teacher, even though I am a retired person, I still continue to teach in one place or another. We should not be mere compilers of factual information to be passed on to the students. But we have to demonstrate to them how to use the cognitive tools to relate knowledge to the past, present, and the future. So this is important that I have to say that even when I teach English, I don't just teach English from the textbook. I teach English, when I teach English, say, a 20th century play or a 20th century novel or a 20th century prose writing, I first put them on to 20th century history. I tell them about the 20th century philosophy. I tell them about the 20th century scientific development. I tell them about how the difference has brought about in our mental attitude towards religion, towards science, towards philosophy, towards thinking, towards history. Place the text within that. This kind of fragmentation that we are now specializing in, this should go away. At every level of teaching, we have to say we cannot compartmentalize it. We have to have a holistic improvement and a holistic understanding. The second aim of education was stated in the 18th century by Rousseau, and this is something very dear to me. I want to teach the student, the learner, human condition. Brilliantly put by Rousseau. We have today the proliferation of nuclear arms, weapons of mass destruction, widespread of network of terrorism using religion as a mask to commit dastardly crimes against humanity, then the environmental conditions and the natural disasters that have led to tsunami and floods and storms, etc. They all shown human existence is vulnerable. The uncertainty and unpredictability of existence has never been more pronounced than it is today. And as teachers, we have a very, very great responsibility to make students understand the need to foster the link between man and nature, to see the connection between the living world, the physical world, and the human world. We talk about sustainable development. We talk about ecological view of reality. But how many of us are really saying that these two topics are intertwined with a knowledge of physics, economics, genetics, politics, philosophy, and spirituality? Simply we bandy the term sustainable development. And how can the children understand unless you tell them story, a story about our economic growth, a story about genetics, a story. We have to bring in, pack in a lot of this material. And then have, many scientist artists. Su Song, who was a statesman, astronomer, cartographer, horologist, pharmacologist, mineralogist, zoologist, botanist, etc. And then we have Archimedes, we have Leonardo da Vinci, we have Benjamin Franklin, we have Einstein. And Einstein said, After a certain level of technical skill is achieved, science and art come close together. The greatest scientists are the greatest artists as well. As teachers, we have to show the children a glimpse of all things bright and beautiful, to inculcate in them a passion for life. Then there will be no suicide. The last one, the fourth aim of education. Again, something that is cardinal. Wherever I go, I tell the students about it. It is training the students in citizenship. Education should offer a general preparation for life and citizenship. It is our responsibility to train young minds to think, to analyze, to debate pressing issues that they will have to face as future citizens and voters. We have the internet, we have the email, we have the Skype, etc. The world has come very closer to our doors, but no country can now remain in isolation. In this century, the concept of global citizenship is very, very important. It's not just only I'm a citizen of India, but I'm a citizen of the world. And we have to see that a new kind of humanism has to be taught. A new kind of humanism based on human rights, based on human dignity is to be inculcated. And how do you do it? We have to develop in our students the capacity for critical examination of oneself. You have to critically examine yourself. I do not know how many of you really watched Leander Pace, the great tennis star that we have. He was giving an interview last night. And Pace is supposed to be our Olympic gold medal winner this time. But he has moved out of his partner Mahesh Bhupathi, and he has got another partner. And he gives a very good kind of that's a kind of a humility and a kind of critical exam. He said, I am old, I am 37 today, going on to 38 by the time the London Olympics begin. My legs are not swift enough to run about. Same with Tendulkar, same with Rahul Dravid, same with V.S. Lakshman, everyone. What happens is that it is time the young people are trained. So I am going to partner a young man who will be running all over the court while I serve and do. Brilliantly said. That's the kind of a thing that I need, that you have to develop in the young minds, based on something like that you have the power, you have the capacity, you have the dignity, you have the human right. So the capacity for critical examination of oneself, of one's tradition, the ability to think of oneself not as just a small citizen of Chennai, citizen of Delhi, but citizen of India, but citizen of the world. I'm sorry that today we are 2,500 years back he wrote. And he simply says, soon we shall breathe our last. Meanwhile, we live. And while we live among human beings, let us cultivate humanity. That should be what you should tell your students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raghu. If anybody would like to put forth any questions, welcome to take a couple of questions after Dr. Raghu has spoken. I think Dr. Raghu, I actually personally wanted to ask you a question, and maybe I'll put it while everyone else is thinking about it. Wanted you to highlight a little bit more about the drama and education component, which a lot of teachers today, theatre and education is something that has to be integrated in the classroom teaching.
Well, thank you. I briefly touched upon it as what I did within the classroom. Theatre and education is something very different from what we teach inside the classroom. Now, theatre and education is, one of the things that I feel is there has to be one-to-one correspondence between what you see in the text and what you live through in real life, right? Now, theatre and education provides you that platform. You have the text before you. It can be Shakespeare, it can be a modern playwright, it can be anyone. What you have is you have the text. But the text is something, when we say we have a text and when we prescribe a text, it is important to realize that this text has been prescribed because it seems to authenticate our life experience. If it authenticates your life experience, the theatre and education merely does this thing. You make them enact the play, you make them emote the feelings, you make them act. And in the process, After all, the theatre is a kind of an interconnectedness between two people, between three and four or five. The kind of a relationship. So, the moment the child starts acting, it could be a Romeo, it could be a Juliet, it could be anyone. The moment the child starts acting, two things happen. One, the child immediately loses all his self-consciousness. He gets into the role of Romeo. That's one of the things that we have to do. You have to bring somebody to be very objective and not be subjective. One of the ways that we did in theatre and education, I have done it in a number of places, is that we make the students themselves act the play. We then make them write the play. And it is a kind of a group activity that we indulge in. It has a group therapy. It has also an individual therapy. The individual therapy is that you get out of yourself. The group therapy is ability to work with others. And three, the ability to understand, get into the other's shoes and see how it is to be a pauper, how it is to be a poor man, how it is to be a lover, how it is to be a hater, how it is to be an aristocrat, how it is to be an ordinary person. You play different roles and you get into the skin of the things. And that is what the education has to be.
Thank you, Doctor. I think we've been enlightened by the statement that you made. Students, the brain well formed rather than the brain well filled. And that is where the primary focus in classroom teaching lies today. I'm sure all teachers are working towards that. It's the how that is very important. I think we also like the point that you talked about making the teaching profession more attractive socially and economically. I think the examination that you spoke about, Finland is a country which has done very well, and
Yes.
the toppers in the school education system for Finland go for teaching, and that's where the connect really lies. And I think private-public partnership, as you mentioned, is really the way forward, because we need all of us to work together to raise the level of education in the country, for the rich, for the poor, for everyone. I mean, everyone's equal before in a democracy. Teacher being the most important person in the classroom, I think all of us would kind of agree with that. And the focus on helping children face challenges in life. A lot of focus on that, which is where it takes us away from the suicides or the disappointments or the discouragement that children face today. And most important point, I think, ma'am, that you made was the human connect, which is
bring back the education means examination system in classroom.
Just introduce yourself.
I think it is very important. It is not a strain. The problem is that we always think we mollycoddle our children. It is time that we bring the education system, the examination system back into the school fold.
Because you said that Mr. Kapil Sibal is involved in this, but I personally think that Dr. Manmohan Singh, whom we say is an honest man, but basically I think that he's a person who's protecting corruption, and sometimes I feel that he has a PhD in corruption. Because you are the head of a college, you are principal. If anything goes wrong in a college, automatically the onus lies on the head of the institution. So I think something Dr. Manmohan Singh needs to speak about this.
I don't want to get into politics, I would like to avoid that. But the basic thing is, since you was the Minister of Education who made the proposal, I made this kind of a thing, because ultimately, if anything is going to go from IL&FS, it should go to the Minister, and says that many people still feel, and I have met many teachers, and many teachers, they all feel, especially from government schools, not so much from private schools. From government schools, they say, ma'am, do something. This is really becoming out of hand, because the 15 plus the hulk of boys who sit there, they do nothing because they know that they will pass. This is something that is happening everywhere. So it is time that we bring the focus back into examination. And, please, a teacher is not just a teacher is a mentor. When you find some student has got a psychologically, a slightly imbalanced position, please, I have got many students. I used to bring them to my room, even though I was principal, I used to bring them to my room, give them a cup of coffee, sit with them, spend time with them. And then by the end of the day, they will say, You have one friend. You have got one supporter. Don't betray this friend and supporter. That's all. Salutary effect. So we have this kind of a thing that nobody is going to jump from the 6th floor or the 7th floor. It's not like that. We have to train our children to face challenges, and the moment you face challenge, what a joy. So tell them about the joy rather than the process.
I think we have one more.
I am Sohan Mittal from Cambridge School, Srinaspuri. First of all, I must thank for such an enlightening talk. And my question is basically, we say yes, CC is going on, homework is being given. As you have already highlighted, it's cut and paste situation. The children are not even told that which web page you have to go. Which web page they have to go. So ultimately they are spending a lot of time. Lot of time is being wasted. So somehow, if at all the teacher is giving the homework, say you have to make this particular project, he must give the links at least, so that the whole day is not wasted. What happens is self-study is totally gone. His development is totally gone. His playtime is gone. Maybe he must be exposing the whole world of the internet, but his social context, his personal life, his behavior with the friends, that is all gone. This is what I am finding a change.
I think.
Well, can I give it? Yeah. There's one simple kind of an answer that I can give. If this answer had worked with my 18 plus in college, I think it should work much better with the younger children. All of us have come from the same stream. All of us have gone through the education. All of us have gone through the grind. And then finally we have ended what we are today, right? And one of the things that we have to teach is organizing time. Time organization is very important from our childhood. You wouldn't believe, I was a student only of mathematics, physics and chemistry at the BSc level. And at the master's level, I switched over to English. I don't know what possessed me, but I switched over to English. It was tough to make the change from science to humanities, especially to English. What is a kind of organization? What was it that really helped me? It was my father made me go through the drill when I was a child. From the time I was about 8 or 9, he gave me this thing. Every day I am giving you a timetable, and this timetable you work according to this timetable. At the end of the day you will get a sweet.
Professor Sharma. He is a former director NCERT. He has headed several academic and administrative posts in NCERT, has had the responsibility of executing major curriculum development projects in chemistry from school up to university level. Professor Sharma has contributed extensively in various aspects of science education, teacher education and distance education, as an educational consultant to national and international organizations like the UNESCO, the World Bank, Commonwealth of Learning, to name a few. He continues to advise the Government of India on policy matters with Planning Commission, NCTE, NIOS and MHRD. He will speak about the quality of education. Professor Sharma.
My esteemed colleagues on the dais and my fellow teachers. I was not very sure as to what I should be engaging myself today in this session, because the theme of this particular seminar itself was very, very significant. And therefore, I will present before you some of the concerns, I think, which we must address in our own thought processes, because they are very serious concerns. We have a topic here which says raising teaching learning standards to global norms. The very title of this particular seminar has some basic assumptions in it. That our standards are not akin to the global norms. We are also not very aware of what are our national standards which we want to really achieve. We are equally not aware in this audience about what the global norms are to which we want to reach as our goal. So, it's also clear that most of our discussion that we would like to have today will be related to school education, because teaching learning standards would be in school education, in higher education, in professional and technical education. So we'll leave out the segment of other areas of education and confine our attention only to school education. Now, who will determine these benchmarks? That this is our national standards and these are the global standards that we want to reach. I draw your attention to the period of 1986 when we had our second national policy on education during Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's time. And in that policy document, which is a 50-page document, most of our education friends must have already gone through it, there was one concern which was mentioned about this. What are the goals that we have to achieve in order that we can know that we are leading our educational inputs into that direction? And there was one particular term to which a lot of people objected also, that we must set standards which are called minimum levels of learning for each stage of education and for each curricular area in education. So the word minimum did not appeal to many people. They said, what is minimum? Do we talk about minimum in education? And then there was a concern that, all right, called essential levels of learning. And in fact, this country did a very important exercise at that point of time in defining what exactly we expect a primary school child at the end of 5 years to be able to do, to be able to perform, to be able to express. This exercise was done, but we could not carry it forward beyond the primary stage. And even up to the primary stage, we faltered in many ways, that we did not have real wherewithal to get to the brass tacks and implement in our school system, which is really so much of truncated. We have a government school system, we have private school system, we have some very high-flying school system with infrastructure which I have never seen anywhere. It is the fantasy if you enter a school premises. The other day I was invited to go to a very big school, in fact I was very impressed, because the infrastructure of that particular school was really awe-inspiring. And then they had a small function and I wanted to find out. I said, if I don't know what will these children will really remember after they go out of the school. Will they remember the air-conditioned rooms or whatever? At least I was in a Tajpatti school when I was started my education, but I can still recall what my teachers did to me. Who influenced me? Who influenced me in such a manner that even today I cannot forget that input from that particular teacher. So education is really a kind of an interaction between the teacher and the taught, which really determines what exactly is happening in the system. And I don't think it is too much connected with the extent of an infrastructure that we would like to bring into education. That's important, but I don't think we have to give it the first place in this whole exercise. So therefore, we are no longer in the system in which a teacher would be a self-enlightened individual on his or her own merits. We need a large number of teachers. Education was elitist in our earlier ancient concern. Education is a mass education in today's concern. Equality of opportunity for all citizens is the concern now which the Constitution provides. What do we do in such a situation? We have to prepare teachers to perform that role. And to prepare a teacher to perform that role, I think we are in this country in a And the beauty is that this person takes the examination, gets some, at least a good first, second division. And some fellow in some reasonably good institutions who continue to attend classes also scrape through and get some kind of a second division. This itself brings us to the question of what kind of a teacher education program do we have, which without attending you can perform and get good grades. And by attending, you also make some grades, but not very different. And this brings us to the question of the teacher education curriculum. What type of a curriculum? The curriculum, teacher education curriculum, is in the present context diverse from this curriculum which we require for the school education. It does something, school curriculum requires something else. So the preparation of a teacher towards that goal, teacher should have the potential to draw it out of the child's mind, create environmental context so that the child can react to the environment, formulates. If he does something inside the classroom, in any particular lesson, he needs to have an idea why he or she did that particular aspect. What for he did it? And what is the kind of influence that he expected the child would be able to do that? To make a teacher a reflective practitioner of whatever he or she does requires a different transformation of the role which this teacher has to perform here. We are effectively integrated. In this country, there was an experiment done way back in early 60s in 4 regional colleges of education under the NCERT of having integrated longer duration 4-year programs.
And it sounds absurd, but I'll quote from Howard Gardner where he says, education should not be about finding the right answer. And that is where I think Professor Sharma has drawn our attention to having a classroom which is reflective, thinking environment, so that there are questioning, inquiry skills, all that being focused on in the classroom. We can take a couple of questions for Professor Sharma if there is somebody who wants to ask something. Doctor, would you like to?
I thought Sharma, I've been working for long. I know him. Sir, I would like to have a few questions because you've been in NCERT for a long time. NCERT is the key nodal institutions for developing textbooks, examination standards and things like that. With ICT being in place, how do you see role of NCERT? Because NCERT also has a learning basket which has all the textbooks online available. Any students, any teachers can download anytime, feel access it. But today there are also several ICT service providers having that this is a kind of workbook, this is a kind of, what is NCERT's role, do you see, sir?
I won't comment on NCERT's role because I retired in '99. It's almost 12, 13 years ago that I was a part of NCERT. The current dispensation in NCERT would probably be the best persons to answer, but I would still like to tell that. You see, way back in early 60s, 59, 60, this concern came to United States because of the Sputnik which USSR had shot into space. They did such a strong and such a versatile analysis. They prepared technology support devices, material, only in areas which could not be effectively communicated by the teacher in the classrooms. There is some abstract idea which cannot be communicated, howsoever good teacher I may be. They identified all such areas in the area of chemistry that I am familiar with that, but there are physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, every area. And only on those areas they prepared those interventions. The teacher was in a position to use that intervention because the teacher himself or herself was not able to communicate that because of the nature of the abstraction involved in that concept. I would feel that what is happening today in ICT, etc., you are only putting an electronic textbook to the hands of the child. Instead of turning this page, He's turning he's going on pushing the keyboard, and then he gets on the monitor one page after another page. I think we need to think about it.
There is a very good point that the Professor Sharma has made, not merely putting all the text onto the computer. In Delhi University, I am part of the movement. We are using the ICT in a very different way. Exactly what Professor Sharma said, all of us had felt, that we didn't have sufficient time to go into very difficult topics, and we could just do the barest minimum within the time that was allotted. So what happens to other things that the student should learn? So we have devised for every, and I'm from the English stream, so for every poem, for every text, for every play that we are teaching that is in the prescribed syllabus, we bring about 50 to 100 questions depending on the length of the text.
Thank you. I'm from Malve Public School. My question is, I think everybody would be agree with me with this point, that aren't we feeling that reading skills are lagging behind because of this technology? The children are, they are not more involving themselves to sit and read the text, to sit and go into the text, read word by word, expressions. We are lacking somewhere. I don't know how to improve this quality in the classrooms where we are introducing these technologies to.
Well, the answer obvious answer to your question is yes. It is affecting the reading profile of the young learners here. It has also deleterious effect too. When you are reading something, the visual of which is not before you, there are many processes which keep on going over here, which allows you to visualize what is happening. Look, for instance, if you see a commentary of cricket commentary or radio and see a television which says the ball goes into mid-on, I switch my mind to where is mid-on or mid-off. Or what has happened to this one? Look, this part of the exercise, the brain is simply shutting off when you have all the visuals and everything else. Therefore, the question is important. We still need to have that reading. Now, let us sit together and work out what is the best way of trying to do this with the children inside and outside the classroom. We need to bring in that. They may be reading on the monitor.
Yes, they're very comfortable reading the captions. They're very comfortable reading the captions, the titles on the screen. But if you ask them to read into their books, they don't want to look into.
But these are the
When you post your questions, some of the solutions were there with you itself. Like while you're talking, that the difficulty that you're finding as a child is comfortable with reading on a monitor, but not very attracted by what is there in the notebook. So the challenge is for us to make it attractive, make our notebooks as equally attractive as the monitor. Now, what is it that thrills a child towards the monitor is what we need to understand. So in fact, if you look at some of the progressive schools now, what we do at the school levels are, right from the KG level, it's quite possible to enrich the child to some vocabulary words. These vocabulary words could be simple sight words which are commonly visible in front of them. And it becomes a pleasure for the child to be able to recognize things, say something which another child is not able to do. It becomes it's a matter of challenge, it becomes a matter of celebration, and ultimately you will find a lot of children at the age of as young as 2, 3, 4, 5 can also pick up a lot of words. It's important very much to familiarize the child with these words. That's one of the reasons that the Montessori training talks about introducing letters in smaller letters, not in caps lock, because what you see around yourself in the whole world is more.
When I go out, the children are going to say, "Oh, you are the teacher's pet. You are always there with your hand up." So that is also one of the things that they don't want to answer. It's not that the teacher has not taught properly.
See, we can seek consolation in any manner we want to. because now in the Philippines, let me tell you, Subir Shukla and myself together in some assignment in some country. In the Philippines, the culture that you will not speak before an elder is so strong that the child carries this to the classroom itself, and the teacher is an elder person, so he can't ask anything, just like you can't ask anything. It's a problem with the Philippines people in their system of education. How to get out of this? How do we do an inquiring mind or spirit of inquiry that the child will not ask at all? But I think this is a more significant role which we could perform. Would be frustration in the beginning, but probably it will lead to something. You have to create that confidence in the child first, that you ask. Doesn't matter what question is. Questions are never foolish, answers could be. And this atmosphere, if it is not created, whatever best teaching we do, even if they have understood, they will not ask any question. I'll end up, I don't want to do that, but there is a very important anecdote which I want to share. There is a Kendriya Vidyalaya on the campus of the IIT, JNU and NCRT, 3 institutions, primary school only. And class consciousness in this country is really supreme. Only the children of group D employees, C and D employees go to that school, in the Kendriya Vidyalaya. Professors, readers, lecturers don't send their children to that school. That's a different story altogether. I asked my colleagues in the Department of Elementary Education, there's one Professor Vinita Paul, a very capable lady. I said, your department should spend half the time, forenoon there or afternoon school is not there, and be with them and identify what exactly needs to be developed, thought about in primary education. Then we will undertake some research studies and find out answers to those problems. Nobody accepted my suggestion because this fellow unnecessarily is bothering us. Why should we go to the primary school? So I started going myself. Then, they said that this fellow is himself going, let us go. It went on. I give you only one example. I have some 25 anecdotes which I collected during my visits to that primary school. In one of the classes, it was, I think, class 2, the teacher was trained in some training program on child-centered education, joyful learning, all those vocabulary he had in plenty. And she was doing it also, interactive learning. So she was saying, subtract 19 out of 35, something like that. Subtract 19 out of 35. जब पूछता है तो मैं भी पूछता हूँ, दूसरा भी पूछता है. तो कई बार तो किसी को कह देना चाहिए कि तुम्हें ये सवाल पूछना ताकि चल पड़े चेन. ऐसा भी होता है. तो एक बच्चा कहता है, मैम दूसरा ये उधार तो एक लिया था, 5 के 6 बनना चाहिए था ना, 15 कैसे ले लिया आपने? ये कौन से बच्चे हैं? प्रोफेसरों के बच्चे नहीं थे ये, ग्रुप डी एम्प्लॉइज के बच्चे. मैंने किसी पब्लिक स्कूल के बच्चों से ऐसे सवाल नहीं सुने, क्योंकि बच्चे तो बच्चे हैं, अपॉर्चुनिटी है. और चलता रहा. अब मैम को परेशानी, मुझे भी परेशानी. हाँ, वो कह रहे एक बच्चा और उठा, मैम उधार ही लेना था तो 2 भी ले सकते हैं. अब वहाँ पे 3 महीनों में 25 सवाल ऐसे निकले जो बीएड के करिकुलम में नहीं है. अगर उस हर एक सवाल का जवाब इस क्लाइमेट के जनरेट करने से टीचर के पास आता जाए, टीचर का प्रोफाइल 1 साल में कहा होगा, ये है उसकी प्रोफेशनल डेवलपमेंट. तो प्रोफेशनल डेवलपमेंट विल नॉट टेक प्लेस अनलेस द टीचर with determination creates a climate of no barrier between him and the learner.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. I think he has a lot of stories which we'll share at lunchtime. I'll request Subir Shukla to make the next presentation. A little profile about him. Stephanian Subir Shukla began his career in education by living and working in a tribal village in MP. With the IL&FS primary education program. As educational quality advisor, SSA MHRD, Subir Shukla helped develop the quality framework for implementation of the Right to Education Act. As principal coordinator of IGNUS ARG, Subir heads a group of professionals working in the area of improving quality of education from pre-primary to secondary level. Apart from India, he has worked extensively in developing countries in Asia and Africa. He has to his credit several publications for children. He will speak on the topic, really raising teaching learning standards in schools.
So good afternoon, everyone. This is something so difficult to do that it takes a lot of courage to speak on a topic like this. Can you really raise teaching learning standards in our school? Most of the time, I think that is the question. So I'll get into it straight away because I'm getting close to lunch.
We have an hour away.
All right. Now, in order to RRTLS is really raise teaching learning standards in our schools, there are 4 things that need to be done. These 4 things have been learned after goofing up on very large scale. I've been involved with working with governments to train 3 lakh teachers at a time and making mistakes over and over again. These are the 4 things we have learned. Number 1, somehow we talk about education in a language which only a few hundred people can understand. If you look at the NCF 2005 curriculum, I'm willing to take a bet with you that only 500 people in the country really understand it. And they may not even care about it, but that's another story. We have 13 lakh schools, government schools. We have 4.5 lakh private schools. We have about 60 lakh teachers. So you need to talk in a language which every ordinary person can understand. If you're going to talk about age-appropriate, context-specific manifestations of multilingual contexts in which cognitive development takes place, you can forget it. It's not going to happen. So that's number 1. We need to talk about language, about education in the language of millions. Second, from the 2 previous speakers, you've already heard about some of the changes that need to take place. We need to really identify what are the critical changes. Very often these changes are not sufficiently well formulated. We need to formulate them very clearly. A third thing is, a lot of the times teachers are told some very general thing to do. Go ahead and be child friendly. So what does that mean? That's like telling somebody, hit that target, but you don't know whether you've got a stone in your hand or a gun or what. How do you do those things that are expected to be done? So the first thing is, what is the right thing? And I think everybody needs clarity on that. I believe most of the curriculum documents do talk about this, and we do ignore them. Second, are children learning in the right way? So what is the right way? Again, curriculum documents and even the right to education now talk about it, which is learning in an activity-based manner, not in a manner where the child is just passive, but involving the child as a co-creator of his or her own knowledge in the classroom process. I'll be talking a little bit more about this a little later. Third, that children learn the right amount. So what is the right amount? It's what the syllabus tells you, but it can be a lot more than that. These are the easy questions about the quality part. The next 2 are the really tough one. Fourth question is, do the first 3 apply to each child in the class? Whether it's a disabled child or a child who's disadvantaged, it will change. Learning assessment already, the whole issue of CCE is not so much driven by the need to remove exams, but by the need to have a situation where the teacher responds in real time to the development of the child. Removal of exams has not got to do with removal of evaluation. In fact, it increases the evaluation. So, okay. All right. Okay. All right. This one is a rectangle and the small one is also a rectangle. They are very different, but they are still called rectangle. Why? So what I'm doing is that just by this ordinary thing of an experience that we are all sharing, we create a small challenge, dive into it, start reflecting on it, and slowly, jointly create an understanding of what a rectangle is. Instead of, rectangle is made of 4 lines. which crisscross each other in the mind of the child. So you need a situation where the teacher and the student collaborate. Everybody will know the name, but nobody would have seen it. That's how activity-based teaching is in India. You know? Everybody knows the name, but it's not seen. It's not really happening. It's in the air. So we need to find ways of enabling teachers to experience it for themselves. If I have never learned myself in that way, how am I going to enable others to learn? So all our teacher development programs, our in-service programs need to manifest this kind of pedagogy. Only then can it be done. The third dimension is that a big shift in relationships. There are some very peculiar problems right now. One of them is that children are seen as accountable to teacher and teacher is seen as accountable to officials or principal. But in reality, the official has a job because there are teachers and teachers have a job because there are children. So who should be accountable to whom? What is the nature of collaborative partnership that we have to talk about? Most of the time we hold others responsible for things not happening, but we are not responsive enough to the situation. One big issue which all of you face, it's always debated, is what should be the nature of atmosphere in our classrooms. Is discipline a great idea? To my mind, one of the most anti-education statements anybody can make is the statement, "Sir, please tell me what to do and I will do it." People who make such statements are very dangerous for the country, and we have 90% of our people or 95% of our people making this statement, and that the reason is they all went to classrooms and schools where they were told what to do and they had to do it. How do we overcome this? Can there be a collaborative classroom where children and teachers are not enemies, where one child is not teased by others just because he wants to answer a teacher's question? I don't have an answer to this right now, but I think that's the direction in which we need to be working towards. And lastly, we most of the time we don't realize it, but there is an undercurrent of discrimination which is always present in us. You must have seen statements like, "He was a very poor boy, but he was very honest. She was girl, but she was a very brave girl. Even though he was Indian, he was intelligent." That's the kind of discrimination we have. Look at the kind of visuals we have. Look at the kind of stories we have. Look at the fact that how violence is glorified, whether it is in Mahabharata or in getting a medal in the army or wherever. There's a huge range of issues in where discrimination comes in again and again in our material. It gives people a feeling that they don't matter or that they don't belong. And how do we overcome that is the question for us. Again, it has some implications for pedagogy, for methods, and so on. So this is in terms of defining what are the changes we really want. These are the three areas of outcomes, processes, relationships, where we need to define the change and then work towards it. There are a few components which help us make these change happen, and we need to find practical ways of using these components. They are these 5 components of pedagogy, assessment of learning, in-service teacher development, academic support system, management of learning and academics. I'm deliberately not talking of curriculum and textbooks here. Quite a lot has been done in our country. We have better models than we used to have earlier. And in fact, in the interest of time, I may not even take too much time on each of these. Do you have any views? Why is it that in traditional women's clothes, there were no pockets? Precisely. I can spend a week on this. I can use IT actually to get my students to troll through all the material and come out with a whole range of things. They would go into, as ma'am was saying, there's an economic side to it, there's a gender side to it, there's a power relation side to it, there's a sociological, there's a design side to it, and so on and so on. It's a way of inquiring and understanding a lot more than you would if you read 5 lessons from 5 different subjects. You could debate, you could discuss, and students would ask you things and they would go out of the class and be talking about it during their break as well. So what is the nature of challenge that we create in our classroom? What is the kind of reflection that we do? We follow a method which is very naive and innocent. We just give the answer. So children, here is the 5 things you should know. So if you already given the answer, why will anybody want to ask you anything? So there is a range of pedagogical requirements, our challenge is that we have 3,000 years of the concept of being a guru running in our blood. Why? Not because they had been told to do anything, but because they were given the status of a human being. I did a large-scale evaluation of a program in Tamil Nadu, which is in 34,000 schools, and we sent teams to 1,953 schools, interviewed thousands of teachers, and who were doing a new kind of activity-based learning process. And you know what? 95% of them said, we are doing this not because this is pedagogically great. We are doing this because our leaders are listening to us. They come to our school. The minister has come to our school. The state project director has come to our school. They sit on the floor. They talk to us. That is why we are doing it. So perhaps the issue in training is not about putting more and more capability into the teacher. It is something else. We are not only barking at the wrong tree, we are barking at a tree which does not exist.
Thank you so much for demystifying the complexity that exists in education and asking all of us here to do it simple, direct, focus on the outcomes, the processes and the relationships in the classroom, and move from the easy to the difficult. Take a stepwise approach to the whole thing. We could probably take one question if there is and then move to the next speaker. Should we move to the next speaker? Somebody wants to ask something? Yes, please. You need a mic. Can we have a mic? At the last one. Please introduce yourself and then.
I'm Amity from Terra Public School. My question is, sir, you told us that the people, those who say that, tell me what I have to do, I do it, or teach me how to do it. See, you said that such kind of people.
The second part I didn't say. I said, teach me how to do is fine.
Yeah.
The first part is not.
Yeah, the first part is you said that there are people who say that, what should I do? You just tell me what I do. I will do it. So readily they accept, So these people are dangerous. So do you mean to say that readily accepting or putting a question, what should I do? Does it mean that there is no curiosity in them? If anybody asks us that how to do this or teach me what should I do, it means that they have the curiosity or inquisitiveness to learn something. And regarding teachers, how should they change their attitude towards it?
Actually, I think maybe I could not communicate fully there. If somebody says, teach me how to do it, is a different question from tell me what to do. Yeah. Right. Tell me what to do is very different from that. A person who says, tell me what to do is abdicating responsibility completely, especially in terms of in terms of living life as we do. So if it's a government official who says, who is responsible, let's say, for bringing about better health conditions, simply doesn't take any decision on himself or herself, does not analyze the situation, just says, give me the finally concluded version of specific activity that I must do and I will blindly do it. And that's what is happening in a big way in our country. There are other people who simply don't do anything, or people who do this particular thing and we don't see any improvement, and you can see why. Everybody prefers to be like a postman who has to carry something from someone to someone else without being personally involved with it, not taking an initiative, not taking any responsibility, not being connected with it. So to my mind, blind obedience is an abdication of responsibility. It's an unwillingness to take decisions, unwillingness to face the challenges, unwillingness to come out with what really is required to do and exercise one's own mind. Very often, even in judicial cases, you hear that what is that, exercising the mind was not done. Something like that statements. I mean, that's the minimum that I would expect anybody who has been through education to do. And when one says simply, sir, whatever you say I will do, that person is going against the education that he or she must have received. Curiosity is fine. Asking somebody, what would you do in this place, is fine. Somebody says, I'm thinking of doing this for this particular reason, what do you think of that? That is fine. But just giving up and saying, tell me what to do, I'll do it, is not fine.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We'll move to the last speaker for the day, Mrs. Sudha Rajmohan, Principal, GEMS International School. A postgraduate in physics from Hindu College, Sudha Rajmohan has focused on innovative and result-oriented project work in her school. She is a recipient of the Outstanding Principals Awards from Lions Club, and we will have a lot of what happens actually in the classroom, the operational point of view from her.
A very good morning and rather a good afternoon. I would like to make it very crisp and short. So whatever today I'm going to speak about, it would be a reflection of what perhaps I've learned over the period of time under mentorships of some of the people who are joining me on the dais here. I'm so happy that IL&FS has made it possible for me to sit along with them. Dr. A.K. Sharma, I still recall, I don't know whether he would recall, once came into my school when I was teaching at GD Goenka, and he and his team had visited the science department to take a look at, I was heading the department there. And I still remember very candidly when we had departmental meeting, and we were talking about introducing in the middle school, I guess it was, we were introducing a change within the school structure of adding the learning of structure of atom at the level of grade 6 because it was not there in the NCERT curriculum, and we had a long discussion over it over this point when I had a discussion with him also and I spoke to him. And what I appreciate about the NCERT books is that a lot of research is done for doing these books, and I find that ultimately when the books come to the schools, a lot of schools negate saying that these books are not usable to the classrooms because it doesn't give answers to the children. A lot of teachers are fretted by using these books because it has taken the challenge of putting open-ended questions there without the answer. So I would like to, first of all, say that such thinkers like him only can, I think, steer an organization to get into such useful research products for the education community. Going on from there, I would just like to bring in what all I would like to consolidate in today's talk. I represent an international school today as a head of the international school, but my experience with schools has been quite multi-diverse. My own education and my own stay with different schools, I've had experience of being in government aided schools to start with, very high profile as we call it, and many dread it as the so-called air-conditioned closed atmospheres, and also very rich experience of schools which are very spiritual based, missionary based. That is, I recall my days with Chinmaya Mission Schools. So these are the kind of experiences that I've had, and I feel that in this path of education, see, the child who has to learn is no different. You look at any kind of school, and the teacher who has to teach, he or her role is just the same everywhere. And therefore, what I feel is that yes, we can find a lot of reasons why things have not happened today. We can blame it onto systems. We can talk about the policy makers not having done certain things which could have been, that we have not thought enough and made plans. Yes, I was sharing with my panel colleague, Mrs. Ranghavan, and I was totally agree with her when she said this, that we plunge into so many changes in our education system wherein we have not even really thought as to how it's going to work on ground. So looking at all these aspects, what I feel is that today we are here, all of us are here, we are in schools, and we have to take on the responsibility. So starting from, is raising teaching standards the need of the hour? I'd like to say here do you think that raising teaching standard will actually improve the quality of life of the child? I have put on a few points as to what you think that it will do to the world at large. Whom are we targeting when we look at raising the teaching learning standards in the class? We are actually looking at the society at large. We're just not talking about learning English, learning maths, learning science, but ultimately whatever we learn, we put it to use. Sometimes I reflect back, when I used to be a teacher teaching physics to grade 12 students, and the brightest of children in my class go to IIT, out of 3 or 4, after 4 years of their learning, when there is a placement, I find that that bright child gets a job offer in Deutsche Bank. I start wondering, what did it do? What is the entire story about? I so very frantically put energy into the child, motivated him, brought him to science, made it very, very important to him that he has to contribute to this society in science. He was the best student of my class, and he got into IIT because he was selected as the best student. He could clear the IIT JEE examination, and he went in there. At IIT also, he was a very good student, and just check me if I'm wrong, what are the best placement offers which are coming to BTech students after they finish this 4 years of a technological learning? They're supposed to give back to the society in terms of what they learned. Don't you think that if our government was also wasting money on having spent 4 years on making a child into an engineer, and that engineer goes and gets into a bank, starts relearning, and he has to get into understanding finances. He has to compete with a MCOM student who perhaps has learned accounting for a deeper, longer period of time. So if you really see, our education system is quite topsy-turvy. So I just wanted to just relive this this definition of successful education. Let us remember what is a successful education. The test of successful education is not the amount of knowledge that a pupil takes away from the school, but his appetite to know and his capacity to learn. If the school sends out children with a desire for knowledge and some idea as to how to acquire it, it will have done its work. It was not really important that I churned out all students 90% plus, and I made sure that enough number of students from my school got into the IIT toppers list. It is also important that I have diversified field into which my children had interest. I had a heterogeneous set of students in my school. Some would become a painter, some could become an artist, some could become a calligraphist, and there are so many such, I find today, roles and responsibilities that many of our parents also think that it's not important to even talk to the child about such kind of professions. Too many leave the school with the appetite killed and the mind loaded with undigested lumps of information. That's what sometimes happens to our schools. The good school master is known by the number of valuable subjects which he declines to teach. So I've just put down here as to what is it that we're really looking at in terms of successful education. And the only thing which in this 21st century skill that really matters, try and identify what is the skill that matters to us. The skills that you have, that you can learn when you're at school, will not be applicable actually later in life sometimes. They will be obsolete by the time you get into the workplace and need them, except for one skill. The one really competitive skill is the skill of being able to learn. So, though I said in the beginning that a student who went into doing 4 years of engineering and got himself placed and picked up by the best of management institutes and picked up a job as a top leading going into the, say, the World Bank, he actually still has gained that quotient of being picked up only because he had that ability to learn. The teacher had this very typical conventional blackboard way of that I have a genuine problem and students, can you help me? We were very surprised, forget about being surprised, we were really stunned because we had never heard this gentleman actually talking to us. We'd only seen his back, we'd only seen him always writing on the board, and he'd never be communicating much to us. But on that day, he made the difference, and I still remember that little difference that he made. He asked us, "Children, I have a major problem at home. My wife has gone to her home and she's not there for 2 months, and I'm having to manage to, and I can't take leave from school because I do not have enough leaves. I have to come every day to school, and morning times are difficult. I need to I need to do up my breakfast myself, and I really don't know how do I do this." So we got so interested. We said, "Great, today sir has made a difference. He's talking to us, let's all talk." We were there with multiple ideas, a class of 40 to 50 students. I studied from a very simple school, government aided school. 40 to 50 students, we all charged upon him. We said, "We can do this, sir, we'll do this. What would you like to have for breakfast, sir? We'll help you to teach you how to make it." So he said that, "Yes, I don't mind, even if it's bread omelette, it will do, or even if it's a little upma will work." So we said, "Okay, we don't know all that. We can tell you maybe how to make bread omelette." So we started telling him. So he said, look, you all talking together, it's getting very difficult for me. Please, can you speak in turns?" So he started making us to speak in turns. He stopped every minute telling us, whenever we were telling that, "Okay, first you take the bread, do this, put it on the frying pan, put a little butter, turn it this side." He would keep asking, "When do I turn it out this side?" So we said that when it is brown, then you turn it the other side, and we kept asking. We never realized what he was actually trying to do is, and whatever we were telling him, he started writing on the board. And after some time, writing those instructions on the board, he made little squares and rectangles and rhombus around it, and he started putting arrows here and there. And what he actually did was, he created a little flow chart. And this flow chart was that, can I make a good breakfast? And he taught us all about, flow charts, talking about what are the different statements, how do you set it in place. And I still remember that class of maths is the only class of maths perhaps what I remember of those 2 years of school of 9th and 10th standard. So let me tell you, this is how it happens with children. They remember that interesting incident which happens to you when you do a storytelling session. So what I'm saying is, storytelling works at all ages, irrespective of. This was something when I was in 9th and 10th, and I remember my physics teacher in 11th or 12th telling me one day that we learn about a law in physics which is something very difficult to understand. It's called the Faraday's law and the Lenz's law. Any of the science teachers here would be able to relate to me. Little difficult laws to remember and to relate as to how you conclude as to how the law has been applied in a situation. And he told us that, "Have you heard the story of Basmasur?" So we said, "Basmasur? Don't know." So he said, "Okay, today I'm going to tell you the story of..." There were some children who knew a little bit about the stories. He said, "Okay, now today we're going to..." So we were very happy learning about Basmasur. But what he taught us was nothing but the law. Because he said that he came to the point where the Asur was being given a wish granted that if he puts his hand on anybody, that man would perish. So he used it to destroy a lot of people. And the end point came when finally he himself was killed by putting his hand on himself. So we all know the story of Basur. But to break your classes into components where all the three learnings simultaneously happens. So that is why I would emphasize on differential learning. So the teacher definitely has to have preparation to do that. Could we move ahead? Next slide, please. I'll skip a few slides because we are running out of time. Okay. And I'd like to say here that concluding here, I feel whether it's a question of the policy makers to give us that change, whether it is for our nation to be able to implement that change from pocket to pocket, because it cannot happen overnight. But what is most important is all of us as teachers, we have to take the challenge ourselves. So I think we could conclude this session with a standing ovation to all the fantastic teachers who actually have been there for the children for making all this happen. I feel that many of our schools, we do find teachers who are adopting all these ways, and it's important that we celebrate the success of such teachers. As if we can go back to square one, as Dr. Raghun started in the beginning, I would say it all ends up in saying that how much credibility do we give to the teacher? How much credibility do we give to the teacher who is trained, and once she is trained, she is executing what she is going to do? How is she retained? How is she kept in the school, and that she doesn't have to go through the turmoil of moving from one school to another to look for a better option? Because many a times we find schools find it a challenge. Now today, as I sit as a head of an institution, I know how difficult, how painful the task is when you train your teachers and 2 years, 3 years down the line, you find that the teacher moves out, because as a school, you cannot have a weapon which can outshine the weapon shown by another school which is there in the system for long and takes away this teacher. So I'm talking about the kind of cutthroat competitions which are happening today as against the collaborative work which should have been happening in schools across the country. Today the need of our country is to go to these masses. We are supposed to be having collaborative effects within the schools and not competitive edges between schools. Because all these schools are here because that many children are there. Forget about that many children being there. In fact, there are so many more children who still are not into schools. That is why there is a right to education which is prevailing in our country, which is yet not found an answer. A right to education which is simply said on documentation, but it is not being properly implemented at any stage. So what has happened to the government schools? Why are they existing if they don't implement? Is it that they are not resourced? There are too many questions to answer. So I'll leave it to you to ponder on these questions end of the day. But yet I would still like to congratulate once again the wonderful teachers who actually make life happy for their children. School has to be a happy place is what I would like to conclude the day.
Thank you, Mrs. Sudha Rajput, for bringing the focus on the circle of influence that we all hold today. Where we are, what we can do, and how we can impact. How we can impact within the space that we exist, and to celebrate being a teacher and being able to use the various tools and techniques effectively. Thank you so much. Now Dr. Chandrasekhar has this very challenging task of summarizing today's proceedings in 2 minutes. And I mean, Dr. Chandrasekhar, please.
Consolidating in 2 minutes means you can say just thank you. But however, I just wanted to see this whole lot of information being shared amongst and their respective teachers. I would say to honor the teachers, because teachers have the responsible role in transforming the child from nowhere to many challenges ahead. So the panelists here, and I see that a lot of interesting facts have been shared by very eminent academicians here. Professor Hema Raghavan, Professor A.K. Sharma, Subir Shukla, Sudha Rajmohan, and of course my own colleague Nina Paul. Being a teacher, I also have a lot of, she also has a lot of sharings which has been pronging through each and every conclusion sessions. So I classify into two things. One is key takeaways from here, the best lessons learned, and how are we going to take this forward with IL&FS as a committed organizations which look at education as one of the core sector. It is committed. You can see we have been all long working on a PPP format where we don't believe in money, but we believe in the commitment in which we are continuously engaged in the school process. Last 14 years, the school content have been getting into a lot transformation with the digital learning, which I think you will have experiencing it. Not to get into that, but the key takeaways I see what we can take forward from Hema Raghavan's. I see that spoke of citizens of India. We are not, but not of, there are citizens of the world. It means that digital learning has brought us together and we have everything on our hands. She's been talking about a lot of examples of young mind of Mahesh Bhupati, who has been talking about the transformation process. And she also spoke about the CCE aspects on how we should be taking forward in the entire processes. Professor A.K. Sharma spoke very eloquently on the quality of education, the international benchmarking where we have the challenges taking forward. The NCF currently has a challenge in creating an environment in reflecting the child's mind. So he also spoke about teachers being the central point, teacher-centric, where the teachers have the challenging role in the professional education. He also spoke about the pedagogy being incorporated within the teachers over a period of time. The B.Ed kind of is doing a short time, while the Regional Institute of Education, which has been nurturing peer pedagogy, making lessons, etc., nurtured over a period of 4 years, which has got a lot of changes within the education system and the teacher education system. Now, he also spoke about rechristening the teacher education through these processes, which he himself should have conceptualized the Regional Institute of Education. Currently, also he is engaged with the teacher education, NCTE also. The NCTE is a challenge on the teacher eligibility criteria and things like that. He also spoke about the problem-solving skills, the examination pattern, while CCE is looking at the ICT lessons to be integrated as part of classroom teaching, training and retraining of teachers, because I think the teachers also innovate within the classrooms, outside the classrooms, with the children, with a different variety of children. So there's a lot of learning aspects which needs integration into the mainframe of teaching. The emphasis of the elementary education, the teacher's role in the RTE also has been stressed upon. Variety of aspects the RTE has been speaking about, and I think everyone has a lot of lessons taking away. But also not that RTE is there and nobody is implementing. I think it's for us to take away. It's for us which is relevant, which is good, which can be transformed to children, and which can help the community in a long run, will be of very relevant to us. Subir Shukla, he is very critical, very research-oriented, focused, coming through a lot of several innovation methods in the school process. He has spoken about 4 things for change in the school, which you are all aware. In very simple questions, he has very elucidly put it. Are children learning right things in the right way, in the right amount, and how do we apply this? This aptly applies to the teachers in terms of putting their critical thinking and how do they handle the classrooms. So, the challenge of the teacher is also going to be that how do we assess the children in terms of the learning outcomes? That's the challenge which needs to be addressed very holistically. You also spoke about the RTE. I think everyone is focused, attention lies on the RTE, which has many things to tell in terms of positioning of the schools, the number of children to be accommodated, because today we are speaking about a bandwidth of children coming from rural areas, non-rural areas, highly educated, but still yet quality is one of the aspects which is to be addressed. So how do we put this? He also spoke very interesting thing about the optimizing the learning outcomes. So we are not looking at standardized examination, but we take even the assessment also to the students' level, children's level. How do we assess what they understood and how they carry forward? So I think there's a whole lot of transformation needs to be taken place. And he also spoke about the equitable processes, learning as a collaborative effort. I think every teacher has his own unique method of teaching, learning, and the assessment criteria, which I think the Government of India regulations or the RTE Act should allow the kind of flexibility where every teacher can and bring in all these under one platform. Again, find the how schools should invest on a good teacher. What is that can be done? Because a good teacher should be passionate about teaching, praise the success, fair and consistent, works with all, irrespective of the cadre, the class, and other things. So, as a wholesome learning, is an interesting aspect which I'm sure you will all carry forward. But what it has, the second aspect which I was mentioning about, why IL&FS is, we are committed to this, how can we work together in improving the quality of teaching learning process. Sure, I think in the next edition, next chapter, we have an endeavor to continuously interact with teacher, bring out the best practices and see what can be given to this entire community, teaching community. In that process, what we see is that, one is that this shows IL&FS commitment, how we are actively engaged. We are not looking forward to any kind of commitment from each of them, but this is a one forum which you can see for sharing the best experiences, where this can be, you can communicate to others, and a forum for teacher research activity to bring out. I'm sure the research activity has been focused either individually, either as part of their career, or in the government process where diets and other institutions at regional and state level are engaged. But what about others who can be engaged in research? So I see this is a forum which you can engage yourself in a research activity and bring out the best teaching learning practices. IL&FS is also, we are also continuously engaged in the experience and real-time learning processes, which you can see the outcome, can have the digital content. This forum also can act as a gateway for information sharing and bring in change to meet the child-centric learning. Our focus, when we talk to the teachers, they say that it's child-centric learning. Child should learn. They should pick up the activities, or parents are burdened to pick up. On the reverse, why don't we look at the process where we give them the kind of resources which he will be able to self-learn and things like that. So we are also actively working with within our organization. We are also engaged with several organizations where we can source in, bring in the best practices and share it with you. This could be one forum which you can look at. There are many other things. I'm sure our MD is also here, would like to share some of the views sometimes. So even outside the purview, but I would suggest that, yes, please carry forward long-term relations with IL&FS organizations. Pankaj Jindal, who heads, and Nina Paul, who has been actively working in the teacher space, has many things and many kind of activities and pillars of can come out of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Undertaker. I request Pankaj Jindal, the regional head of UP and NCR, who's been largely instrumental in getting all of us here together to propose the vote of thanks.
Respected panelists, all guest invitees, it is an honor and a pleasure today to propose vote of thanks to all of you. We are already late for the session now, and it's been 3 hours here. I would quickly call upon our Managing Director, Mr. R.C. Reddy, here on the stage and invite him here to honor the guest. We would like to express our thanks to Dr. Hema Raghavan for her speech on key issues in education. I must mention our deep appreciation for Dr. Professor A.K. Sharma for guiding us on quality of education today. Professor Subir Shukla for his speech on can you really raise the teaching learning standards. Ms. Sudha Rajamohan for enlightening us today. Nina for moderating the session today. Dr. Chandrasekhar for his closing remarks and be here with us. Thank you. Before we close the session, we also have a small lucky draw. I would like to request my colleague Meenu to be here and manage the lucky draw, please. Thank you.
We have a small lucky draw for all those who are here. So I would request Surbhi to just take the bowl around and 3 volunteers to just pick up 3 registration slips. I would like to call upon Charu Malhotra, who's heading our school infrastructure practice, to give away the prizes to the winners. This is Mrs. Aruna Sharma from Sai Memorial School, Gita Colony. Please give them a hand. And we have Mrs. Ruchika Verma from Nigam Pratibha School, Chilmil Colony. And we have Sunanda Bhutani from Columbia Foundation School. Congratulations to the winners. Thank you, Charu, and thank you very much for being with us. It has been a great pleasure, and thank you to the panelists. Please join us for the lunch now. Thank you.
स्कूल में वो जो एग्जीबिशन लगाते हैं जैसे पीटीएम है तो पीटीएम में तो वहाँ से हम लोग लेते हैं
हमारे स्कूल थोड़े अंडर प्रिविलेज तो जरूर होते हैं, इसीलिए अगर